All right, welcome to another jam-packed edition here of East West Connection Wrestling Podcast. I'm KG. Sig is somewhere over here, up or down. We're not really too sure, but we know he's here. He's on the West Coast. I'm representing the East Coast. We got a jam-packed show for you guys. We have In Your House, the first pay-per-view we're going to be going over from WWF at this time. We have Raw, Nitro, and ECW Hardcore TV. So without further ado, take it away here, Sig. What do we got from In Your House?
We're going to get right into it. Like you said, jam-packed show this week. This week we're covering the end of September, essentially. In Your House 3 came to us live from Saginaw, Michigan. In Your House, the concept was they were starting to break away from just the Big 4 and Big 5 pay-per-views. They were shorter shows with a little lower price tag, but they were trying to see what they could milk the hardcore fans. So this was the third one of these. The cards weren't as strong as the big cards, but they were pay-per-view worthy. Going to get right into it. Savio Vega with a win over Waylon Mercy. It's a good match. Waylon looked like he was about 60 years old. So while I was a fan of the character, there really wasn't much legs to this. He didn't look like a star.
Character was a little strange. How would you describe the character? Almost kind of Bray Wyatt-ish.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of similarities to Bray. It goes back more to Backdraft, I think, which is what the character was originally based on. A little bit of a Southern twang, a little bit of a cool, cocky, but just a crazy character. So there could have been legs, but not with Danny Spivey, not at this point in his career. Next up, we saw Gorilla Monsoon in a segment with Camp Cornette. Well, not really Camp Cornette yet, but Jim Cornette. Owen Hart was in the main event. At this point in the show, he had not shown up. Turns out this is all a ruse, but the storyline progressing throughout the show is that Owen is not here. He's nowhere to be found. Gorilla Monsoon says, hey, this match is happening one way or the other. The Triple Crown match, all three championships on the line, either way. So Cornette, you find a partner or you're going it alone. So that's the storyline of the show. Next up, we saw Psycho Sid with Ted DiBiase against Henry O. Godwin. Basic big man match, had a lot of axe handles, a lot of kicks, a lot of punches. Sid picks up the win, not too memorable. Cut back to Doc Hendricks. Gorilla Monsoon and Jim Cornette still going back and forth trying to find the partner. Decent angle, fun angle. You didn't really know what they were leading to until the end of the show. So it was a fun angle, something you kind of see on Raw nowadays. Like a show progression angle. You'll see the culmination towards the end of the show. But back to action. British Bulldog picked up a win against Bam Bam Bigelow. At this point, I do want to put out a quick correction. A couple weeks back on the show, I had mentioned how Lex Luger had defected to WCW, and that's why they had turned the British Bulldog. Turns out that wasn't the case. My memory was a little bit foggy, and we were still starting to go through the research here. But Bulldog had turned first, and then Luger went out. So there was a little bit of confusion there. I thought it made more sense that they turned him because Luger left.
Yeah.
But they were going with the heel turn either way. So
yeah, I was on the same page there.
Yep. Next up, we saw Mr. Bob Backlund for president. I love the evil Bob Backlund character. It was a great heel stuff. And he introduced Dean Douglas, a guy we've talked about a lot here on the early part of the 1995 programs. Introduced him, good program, good pair, good promo. And that set us up for Razor Ramon versus Dean Douglas, one of the more heavily hyped main events on the show, essentially. It was Dean Douglas's pay-per-view debut. He ended up picking up the win. They're still going with the 1-2-3 Kid slow heel turn here. The story of this match was the referee got distracted towards the end. Razor hit the finish, hit the 1-2-3, but the Kid comes in and slides and does the blind count 1-2-3. Razor thinks he'd won. It ended up not being the case, and Dean wins with I believe it was a roll-up or something there. So they're still pushing the tension between the Kid and Razor, still going along with the Dean Douglas push for now. We'll see that kind of come to a halt after this pay-per-view. Next up was my favorite match of the week and the pay-per-view, PCO, Jean-Pierre Lafitte versus Bret Hart. The story for the match was stupid. The stolen jacket and stealing glasses from the kids in the crowd, and Bret wants to do the right thing and get his jacket back.
Well, he's a pirate, they steal things.
That's true. Still, for 1995, stupid story, but the in-ring was awesome. Started it off hot. Bret, before PCO, I keep calling him PCO, before Lafitte even made it to the rings, plancha right to start. Fast and furious action from there. So if you're going to watch one match from In Your House 3, I say Bret Hart versus Jean-Pierre Lafitte. Yes. Last match, of course, this brought us to the main event. Here we saw the British Bulldog would end up taking Owen Hart's spot. So it was the Bulldog, one night only tag team champion with Yokozuna against world champion Diesel and intercontinental champion Shawn Michaels. Uh, there was a reason for the switch. We'd find out later on Raw, but for the end of the night, you thought we went away with new champs, new tag champs. Shawn and Diesel ended up with the win, only because Owen Hart finally made it to the building, ate a jackknife powerbomb, and took the 1-2-3 himself. The next night on Raw, as we'll get into in a little more detail, just to fill you in on the whole story, Gorilla Monsoon had to reverse his decision because of Jim Cornette's personal attorney, Clarence Mason. I do believe that was Mason's debut tomorrow night. But it was a fun angle, and it played itself out tomorrow night on Raw. But we went off the air with the baby faces holding all the gold. Well, mostly all the gold. There was one tag belt missing for some reason. Shawn and Diesel were sharing a tag to pose with. But go off the air with the crowd happy, and the baby faces overcome the heels. So that's In Your House 3. Like I said, that was Saginaw, Michigan. And a pretty good card. The undercard was very basic, very Raw-like. But the main event had some good stuff, and PCO and Brett was a really good match. So any thoughts on the picture?
Absolutely. I thought it was pretty decent. The last couple matches were pretty good. I was a little confused, just kind of jumping around, going back and forth here. This is the triple header. I don't know, not sure if I like Bam Bam, the babyface, against Sid. I just thought it was weird to see Bam Bam as a babyface. I vaguely remember that ever happening. Bob Backlund loved the running for president thing. He was a total nut job. If you've never seen any of the stuff he was doing around this time, I mean, just crazy guy, an intense guy. If you get a chance to meet him, he's definitely pretty out there. Razor and Dean Douglas was pretty decent. Like you said, we had the ref bump, which they did the previous week, so it was kind of like the same thing they did again with 1-2-3 Kid and Razor. And finally, the Jean-Pierre Lafitte and Brett was an excellent match. And the tag matches, we left off with new tag champions, the chaps with all the straps, as they called it. At least that's what we thought as we went off the air and moved into Monday Night Raw. Monday Night Raw came from Grand Rapids, Michigan, September 25th. We start off with a real fun match I enjoyed. Marty Jannetty, former tag partner of Shawn Michaels, the Rockers, a very popular 90s tag team. And he faced Skip of the Body Donnas, accompanied by Sonny. Like I said, this was a fun match, but I picked up a mistake that the King made on this, not to point out people's mistakes, but I kind of like doing that sometimes. He had said that Marty Jannetty was a former tag champion. I don't believe the Rockers ever won the tag team championships in WWF, unless I'm wrong.
Well, there was the controversial Hart Foundation switch with the tag ropes, if you remember that story. Rockers had won it on a house show or at the televised TV, actually, but they ended up not airing it because the real story was Jim Neidhart was in contract negotiations. They thought he was leaving, so they ended up doing the switch. Then Neidhart ended up re-signing, and they null and voided it, so it never actually happened on TV.
Right.
Small group of people saw the actual title change, but it's not in the books. However, was Marty and the Kid, had they teamed up yet at this point, or was that?
That's a good question. That's a good question, but I think he was talking about the Rockers at the time. But it was kind of weird too, because the Rockers were probably one of the most popular tag teams from the '90s, and they had never held the gold. So I thought that was kind of, it's still something you look back on. You're like, wow, they were one of the most popular tag teams. Moving along, following this match, which I said was a pretty solid match, we saw Marty Jannetty pick up the win. We saw Dean Douglas taking some notes. As we were taking notes watching it. I thought that was kind of funny. And then we moved into the next segment where we see Clarence Mason. So Clarence Mason, this was soon after the O.J. Simpson trial. He had a Johnny Cochran type character, I think you could say. And how would you break down this angle here as he sat at the table with Commissioner Monsoon?
I liked it. I liked the character. It was perfect for Cornette and what he needed to do as a character. Clarence Mason was, like you said, it was that Johnny Cochran-esque character, and the timing definitely worked for this point in 1995 to have a smarmy yet sophisticated, almost too smart for his own good lawyer character. But no, Cornette would whisper something in his ear, and he'd belong to Gorilla Monsoon, and Monsoon would have no choice. You make a good point. So they made it a very interesting angle that the heel was smarter than the babyface. They got what they wanted. They got the tag belts reinstated. However, in order for that to happen, we're going to see the titles defended later tonight. We wouldn't find out who until the match, but interesting storyline there too. So I thought it
So
was a good choice for Cornette to be the one to need the lawyer and the outside apprentice help, that kind of thing.
So basically, what Jim Cornette was trying to say was that Commissioner Monsoon had made Davey Boy Smith the tag champion at that time to tag with Yoko, and since he was not pinned and Owen Hart was pinned, who was not technically in the match, they were able to reverse the decision, and they will have a future rematch, I guess.
Right.
Match number 2, we had Yoko and Owen versus the Smoking Guns. I thought this was a pretty good match, actually. Better match quality this week all around. Like I said, Marty and Skip of the Body Donnas, also known as Chris Candido, was so two very good workers there. I thought these guys, the Smoking Guns, looked a lot better in this match than we saw them a few weeks ago. They looked like the hot baby faces at this time. It was a good match, a good finish, and they became the new tag team champions. So after all
Yeah.
this all this lawyers getting involved and everything, we end up having new champions anyway. So we're seeing the tag belts on both shows now starting to flip-flop quite a bit.
Yeah.
But I thought the Smoking Guns were pretty over at this point, still pretty young, maybe a little green, but I thought they were worthy tag team champions at this time.
Yeah, it was a good angle. They would always get good reactions coming out, so they may not have been a main event level tag, but they were certainly over enough to be the placeholders for what this next step of Yoko and Owen's storyline was all about. Smoking Guns with a surprise win, and like you mentioned, it was very similar to the Harlem Heat American Males type of fiasco from last
Right.
week's Nitro. So you got to
Yeah.
start thinking as things like that are going to come up. You got to think like, was this a picked idea? Did they already have the storyline in their head? Something like that's
Sure.
funny. It's interesting to go back and watch these head to head. One right after the other two to try to pick out where the similarities lie. But no, like you said, new champs in the Smoking Guns, and I like the angle. So
Well, one thing I wanted to point out too is we saw Clarence Mason and we see Jim Cornette at ringside. We saw Sonny a little bit earlier in the show. Was the use of managers and how that's kind of gone away now. And I really enjoyed seeing Jim Cornette at ringside. Great manager, one of the all-time great managers. Of course, Midnight Express, Rock and Roll Express, right? Going back before our days. Also, Sonny, I just thought, I don't know, it's kind of a lost thing you see nowadays. You don't see too many managers even get involved, or even guys who have managers.
right. No, it's true. For a while, it seemed the only time you'd see somebody at ringside is during the Diva era. You'd had a lot of valets, but not
Right.
so much the Bobby Heenan type, the Jimmy Hart type, where you had a gimmick or a character or a mouthpiece, somebody who could really get over the character, the talent. Because a lot of the divas and that type of role, they were just eye candy. Period. That was the end of it. They're not going to come out and cut some scathing promo on your opponent or really put anything more into the angle than what you're literally looking at. So it absolutely is a lost start. But there's been some great ones here and there as the time goes on. Prince Nana on Ring of Honor was a throwback. It's few and far between nowadays, unfortunately. But I agree.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the 80s and 90s, there were so many great ones. Thinking in the 90s, you had Harvey Whippleman, and in the 80s, of course, you said Bobby Heenan, Jimmy Hart, Freddie Blassie. Like, there's just so many great managers that we don't see hardly anymore. I can't. Nobody is coming to mind right now. Paul Heyman. I don't know. I guess that's why we're sticking with the '90s stuff. Stuff.
Right.
Stuff we know what we're talking about most of the time. All right. So the next segment we're gonna see we see Razor Ramon and the 1-2-3 Kid are gonna have a rematch again next week. Also the rematch of Brett and Jean Pierre Lafitte. So we'll be looking forward to both of those matches.
Yep. Sure.
Also, your next In Your House is going to feature the debut of Goldust. So we're going to see Goldust. We've seen some of his crazy promos, so looking forward to that. And also, Shawn Michaels is going to be facing Dean Douglas. So I wonder if this is the point now. He had a match with Razor. Now he's having a match with HBK. Is this the point where the Clique is kind of like,
Right.
they don't want to work with him because it seems like they're putting a lot of time and a lot of effort into his character. He's basically upper mid card, main event level now if he's going to be facing Shawn. So I thought something must be going on here if he's going to be kicked
Sure.
off the show pretty soon.
Yeah, this is definitely
So
around the time that I think Shawn and Razor started whispering a little bit backstage and getting in Vince's ear. Because we also see the same thing essentially with Jean Pierre Lafitte around the same time, where his push kind of gets cut out. And a lot of people don't think that had much to do with Brett because Brett actually enjoyed working with him. They've told stories about how some of these matches that they're doing right now are some of their favorite in their careers, respectively. But you think back, and I know there's an old story about a house show in Quebec when Lafitte, he didn't come out and say I'm not going to job to Diesel, but he pushed for a different finish. Because in Montreal things were different. If you had a guy from the area, you wanted to push him, keep him strong,
Sure.
or at least keep him strong for a rematch. The house show format was kind of different back then. You'd hit town so regularly that you could do a non-finish here and push a rematch in 2 months in a cage match or something big. So that's what Lafitte was pushing for. Was, something. Let's just push for the future. Um, but of course, Diesel and the Click thought he was being cocky. Who's this guy? He's not going to lay down for the champ. Things like that.
Right.
So Click had a lot of push, a lot of push with Vince. So I think this is around the time, like you said, Dean Douglas character's in trouble. It's going to be soon in trouble. And there's a couple other guys. Lafitte is one of them, where Click might have had something to do with their future. So.
And it's too bad too, because we've seen that they're both very talented guys, very young at this point as well. I did see a couple goof ups with Dean. I hate to even point it out with Razor, whether if that was just miscommunication or whatever it was. So I hate to see that. But you definitely know, and not to take anything away from Shawn Michaels or anybody in the Click, but you definitely know that these guys, especially Shawn, had a tremendous amount of backstage power, and they worked a lot of backstage politics. It's been well documented, and I'm sure any of them would say it. And Vince is golden boy, maybe not yet, but very shortly is going to be Shawn Michaels. So if any of these guys have anything negative to say about a fellow worker, that it's gonna go somewhere.
Sure, yeah, it holds weight. And it's funny you mentioned how Shawn's about to be the golden boy, because you could hear it on commentary.
Yeah.
When Shawn would come out compared to anybody else on the roster, just over the top. It's just total hard on for Shawn Michaels. And
deservingly so. He was a great worker, but if you don't go back and listen to some of his guys that he worked with, and Cornette's one that won't shy away from it. Not that his word is the end all be all, but you could hear that he was not a very well liked guy. Maybe even by his own admissions.
Right, especially at that point in his career. So, no, agreed.
All right, so we're gonna go to the main event here.
Yeah, Bulldog and Taker.
Unless you have something else.
Nope,
so Bulldog versus Taker with another great manager, Paul Bearer, we forgot to mention. So as this match gets underway, we have Jim Cornette in the corner of the British Bulldog. We have King Mabel looking on, which is interesting. And then we see Waylon Mercy looking on, which was also interesting. Davey goes to the outside and takes out the knee of the big man, The Undertaker, and hits a pile driver on The Undertaker at one point in the match, which I thought was like, oh my God, I didn't think he can get, seeing The Undertaker take a pile driver was just, the guy's 6'10", and it's just unbelievable. So Mabel actually comes out and splashes The Undertaker, so we have a DQ finish. We see the dudes with attitudes come out again. We forgot to mention that they've come out at every single point in the match. They came out after the Smoking Guns won the tag team titles. They came out right. They were in every segment. The first match they came out as well.
I think either a cutaway in the back for a quick backstage interview or
a segment or something.
But yeah, so, one way or another, the dudes, they dominated TV time this week.
Yeah, they really did. And that's my only maybe negative from the show. But then again, they're two biggest stars at this point, Diesel and Shawn Michaels. So I understand that. So the funny part about this, if you caught it, was the Smoking Guns, when they came back out, they had like soap suds all over them to make it look like they just came back out of the shower.
Oh, I missed that.
You missed that? And Shawn was kind of looking up to him, going like, "You were in the shower? What?" It was kind of funny. It was pretty funny. So they came out to kind of break up this big schmaz here with The Undertaker. Two dudes with attitudes, love fest. They're hugging each other in the ring. And then we get a kind of a preview for next week and a recap from In Your House, the previous pay-per-view from the night before. So I actually enjoyed Raw this week. I thought they did a lot better. All three matches were enjoyable. The segments all made sense. They seemed like they started rolling in a good direction. I know we've been kind of critical of their show lately, but I actually really enjoyed Raw this week.
Right on, yeah. They started off hot. Marty and Skip was a fun match. I dug that. Never going to complain when 1995 Sunny's on my screen, so I'll take that all day. But no, new tag champs. A lot of storyline progression. A lot of new angles being formed. We're starting to see where they're going. Leading into the future, is going to look for a Mabel Undertaker program. Razor Ramon and the Kid are moving off in their own direction. So yeah, some interesting storyline development out of this Raw. And actually, it's funny to also note Raw came in tonight with a 1-9. So a little bit of a flip flop from last week. We'll get more into that after Nitro. But it's kind of it brings me back to what you had mentioned last week, Kev. The ratings weren't so much about what happened tonight, but last week to this week.
Previous week.
Yeah, your carryover fans. Did you do
Sure.
enough to make me want to watch you next week? So I think that does have a big part of it. As we go later into the Attitude Era, you're going to see that might be a little more segment to segmently. You know what I mean? More. I'm losing the
Reflective
word,
of the
but-
live. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
But at this point, I think it was more of a did you do enough last week to get me to come back to you this week?
I
So,
agree with that.
Yeah. So a 1-9 for Raw this week, and I'm good on Monday Night Raw. Let's flip over to TNT and Monday Nitro. Unless you have anything else for Raw, Cage.
Nope.
All right. Nitro. The first thing I noticed was this was a huge arena compared to Raw. I literally watched them one right after the other. The attendance for Raw, it looked like a house show. It was a very small arena. Obviously they spaced it out well to look as full as possible, but it was a huge difference. I'd say double. Nitro looked like a huge arena. The production value is as strong as the past few weeks. That's something we've harped on for them.
The first thing I noticed actually was Pepe wearing a saddle.
Yes, right. He's gonna ride. Weasel's gonna ride him around, or something like that. At this point, Mongo McMichael and Pepe, his little chihuahua, carried him with him everywhere. It's just a running joke in the beginning of the show, but yeah, I wish the Mongo experiment didn't go on at all.
Well, he should be getting involved and getting in the ring here pretty soon, I would imagine.
Well, I don't know. You might have to say, is that better or for the worse?
Good point.
To watch him, so he wasn't very good at either role. But either here nor there for Mongo. He's not one of our characters yet. So, but first off, our opening contest, we saw Alex Wright, who was apparently the gatekeeper for debuting superstars, take on and defeat the Disco Inferno. Disco is a fun character. I may be biased because I love the goofy characters, but Disco was. Yeah, he was strong. Glenn Gilberti went on to have a solid career. Worked in TNA after WCW went down for a while. I think he did some producer stuff there as well. But no, I like Disco, and this was the start of his character, the start of him on Nitro. Up next, we saw Hulk Hogan backstage with a neck brace, put out a challenge to the Giant for the following month, this coming pay-per-view Halloween Havoc at the end of the month. This was a two-part challenge. First, we're going to do the monster truck deal, and then we'll wrestle in the ring for a main event for the title. But they're really pushing this monster truck thing. So somebody Bischoff, I'm assuming Bischoff really saw some big money in monster truck crossover appeal.
Well, you talk about money, and it's like this is where you can see where WCW is already starting to throw away money. Like, oh yeah, let's go pay for Gravedigger, to build our monster truck and have a monster truck match in the middle of our wrestling show. Like, I get it would be cool for the kids, like if you were there, but like it probably wasn't. Obviously it wasn't in the arena. It's outside in the parking lot. So like it just shows this is like our first example to me of like here's WCW throwing money away because they can.
Yeah.
Vince didn't have this type of budget at this point, even though he had a huge budget, but not like this.
Right.
Oh,
it's true. I guess really the better question is obviously Vince did have the budget, but did he have the foresight to think of, well, is this worth what I'm spending my money on? Right. At this point, and like you said, with WCW, they make a lot of these same mistakes, or at least decisions as time rolls on. In the next few years, it'll be they throw away money. And we'll get to those as we tackle them. But the next segment we saw was Lex Luger and Randy Savage. A little recap of their feud, non-feud. They're friends, they're enemies. They don't trust each other. One way or the other, they're gonna finally come to a head. I believe they push it for next week, where Savage puts out the challenge. Luger's all in, and he's gonna put his WCW career on the line if he can't beat the Macho Man. They even go ahead and say WWF by name. The announcers after this, they say, "Well, Luger came from the WWF. He's not welcome there. Is this smart? So smart to put a little extra heat on the match. Almost gives away that Luger is going to win next week or whenever they have the match. But I thought it was all right for what they were trying to get across. Into the next match, we saw Colonel Parker with his charge Kurosawa. I totally forgot about Kurosawa, but he was impressive.
I did too. I thought they said Misawa at center side. It doesn't look like
No, no,
Misawa.
not Kurosawa. He fought Sergeant Craig Pittman. Another correction on my part from last week. I called him Lieutenant.
I thought he was Colonel.
Uh,
Oh no, Kasawa was with Colonel Parker, and he faced.
Right, maybe that's right.
Somewhere. I can't get them all right.
I put Craig Pittman through the entire ranks of the military last week, so I apologize, Sergeant Pittman. But no, it was a good match. Kurosawa was very athletic. He had a good bridge on a German. For me, not seeing him before, I was impressed. And Sergeant Craig Pittman, I don't know why they were pushing him at this point. He was an intense character, but in the ring, he was the poops.
Yeah, he was almost too intense. Like he couldn't even get your grasp about what he was doing and what he was selling. They also sold the fact that Kurosawa had broke Hawk's arm of the Road Warriors, so they were trying to show you that this guy was kind of a crazy could snap at any point, crazy Japanese guy who was solid.
Right. Next up, we saw a promo segment. Arn Anderson and Flying Brian Pillman rocking the fanny pack. A-OK in my book, Brian Pillman. Promo was on Ric Flair, still pushing along that storyline, the feud there, the Horseman versus Ric Flair. Anytime Brian Pillman's in the ring with a mic, I'm cool with that. Arn Anderson too. So that worked for me. At this point, they're still plugging WCW Saturday Night. This is something I've been mentioning for the past few weeks. We're still at the point where Nitro's not the show yet. There's still more. They're kind of splitting things up storyline wise. So if you want to see the continuation or see the next part of the chapter, they're still pushing Saturday night, 6:05 on TBS.
They still had their big stars on there too on Saturday night.
Yeah, absolutely. I think. Oh, and actually, it was Johnny B. Bad gets his title shot against Sting for the U.S. title. We had mentioned that last week, how we thought they would kind of just threw that storyline aside with Johnny B. Bad's booking last week. But he will at least get the title shot against Sting on Saturday night, this coming Saturday night. Getting towards the end of the show, we saw Kevin Sullivan, the Taskmaster, against the Macho Man Randy Savage. This was a fun match. Macho Man ends up getting himself DQ'd. He's so adamant about getting his hands on Sullivan that he ends up getting himself DQ'd. And Big Schmaz incurs. The Giant is in. The Jobber locker room empties out to save the Macho Man. That doesn't work. Lex Luger comes in and makes the save for Savage.
Or does he? Or does he make the save?
That's the thing.
That's the cliffhanger there.
But that's the best way to push that.
He went to grab, but did he go to try to grab Savage, or was he trying to help him? We won't know because the Giant got his mitts on him.
Right, and that's something we'll find out next week. So that's one thing Nitro is doing well here. They're not throwing everything at you for tonight. They're laying seeds for next week to bring you back. So I thought that was very well done. And let me see. I think. That's right. I thought that was the main event, and then they went right into Ming versus Lex Luger, which was the main event. Ming ended up getting the win. The story of the match was that the Giant had just laid out Luger beforehand, so Ming runs in on the offensive the entire match. Luger didn't have much in. Ming wins with the Golden Spike, the Tonga Spike, and
of Umaga.
Yeah, right. No, the beatdown after, and then that's what I had for Nitro. So, fun show. I think I agree with you. Raw may have had a little bit more colorful and more cohesive storylines, just as far as terms of a watchable TV hour of programming goes. But it wasn't a bad show by any means. And Nitro actually came out with a 2-7 tonight. So the exact opposite of Raw and Nitro last week, 1-9 to a 2-7, and now it's 2-7 to a 1-9. So we're already right in the thick of things now. This is Nitro's first technical win on a head-to-head level, and we're right in the thick of it. So next week, it actually flips back again. So we're not going to see the 83 weeks happen for a little bit yet. So we're still in the midst of a little actual competition.
Here, back and forth.
I'm heading competition.
Yep. So I just had a couple things on Nitro. First off, we saw one thing I wanted to mention was in the Hogan interview that he mentioned his father again and how he'll slam you and bury you like his father, which I thought it was a weird choice of words, being that Andre had just passed away. Also, we keep hearing about Commissioner Bockwinkel on Nitro, but never seen him. Never seen a picture of him. Never seen him in a segment. Never seen him in the ring. We've been
Right.
watching now for about a month, and never seen the guy ever. We will see Hulk Hogan, however, next week. The debut of one Dean Malenko and Savage versus Luger, like you said, with Savage Luger's career in WCW on the line.
Right. So interesting show. I like it. I'm good with it. I say we move on to Extreme Championship Wrestling Hardcore TV. Air date September 26, 1995. A lot going
September.
on in this episode. I'm sorry, did I misspeak? September.
Yep, September 26th. Yep, I was good.
Right,
Go ahead.
okay. All right, no, right on. Started off the show with a recap of the Pitbull, Raven, and Stevie stuff from last week. We had mentioned it kind of in good detail last week, but I really dug that match. They kind of interwove a few different storylines in, and everybody came out stronger for it.
Yeah, definitely. They were certainly very over, as I mentioned, with the Pitbulls. There was a lot of things going on in that match. We saw Tommy Dreamer. Of course, we have the feud with him and Raven at this point. Also, we saw 911 finally get his hands and choke slam the pesky little Bill Alfonso. And man, I love Fonzie, but his voice on the microphone, man, that's like nails on a chalkboard. I mean, it's just like, oh,
Yeah,
it's hard.
sure.
It's hard to watch. We also saw that the Pit Bulls have now aligned themselves with Francine. They're still the girlfriend, so to speak, angle. So yeah, I thought it was a good way to start the show. They're recapping something that from that Saturday show that we had talked about, and they're going to be doing that week by week. So
Right.
yeah, what did you have next up after that? We saw Joey Styles, I believe.
Yeah, a little bit of back and forth. Kind of they go between promo and segments, until they get to their main event match for the night. But I had a Dudley promo. I like this guy from last week. I thought he was probably a little underrated because we didn't hear much from him after this point in his career. So still going to look
Yeah.
into see what had happened to Dudley and why he didn't go anywhere. But now backstage, we see Lance Wright, Fonzie, and Todd Gordon. That's always a fun segment. But like you said, Fonzie, the actual promo part of Fonzie is it's almost too much. As if the whistle blowing wasn't enough during the matches. His voice was very irritating, scratchy. But for a new character, you almost need that. So it wasn't bad.
Between that and the whistle, I mean, he knew how to push the right buttons as a manager or as a character.
Right. Moving on, we saw another promo from Raven and Stevie. This one I liked. They're still in with the Pitbull program. Stevie actually showing a little guts. Obviously it's just the two of them, so it's easy to show guts when when the baby faces aren't in your way. But no, it was good, and it shows that this feud's not over. They're still gunning for the belts. They want the belts back.
I love the
Up
way
next,
they set up that. I love the way they set up that camera angle where we saw kind of looking down. They're like hanging out in the back, and it was a really great segment, and we see how great Raven can put together a promo and the intensity that he has. Very Jake Roberts-esque, I would say, about never raising his voice and just
sure.
saying all the right things that really to build the feud, so to speak. But we also
Right.
hear that next week's match, as we have the two special referees with Fonzie and Todd Gordon for the rematch, which would be October 7th. And also, there's going to be Lumberjacks on the outside, one Big Dick Dudley and 911. So a lot of things are going to be going into the rematch here.
Sure. And that's the way to do it. When you have Big Dick and 911, you don't need more than those guys for Lumberjacks.
Yeah, right.
They were really pushing what monsters these two were. Big Dick had just got done dismantling a Mack truck with his knee the week prior, so it was definitely pushed how big and monstrous these guys were, and the why that was important for this match. We
Absolutely.
saw highlights from JT Smith versus Shaw Hack Williams or Hack Myers, excuse me. It was a DQ countout finish again on ECW TV. They shy away from this as time goes on, but always funny to see a DQ and a countout on ECW.
I was wondering where Val Puccio was this whole time. I mean, they mentioned him. I was hoping he'd come back out with the cannolis and the windbreaker like we saw a few weeks ago, and we didn't get it. I was heartbroken.
Right, that's all right. Maybe
But
some more big
another
Puccio in the future.
Yeah, I didn't understand the finish. So what happened was JT Smith was going standing on the top rope like he was going to do something. He fell and fell through a table, the timekeeper's table, which was always a staple of the ECW matches. And so he ended up getting counted out for the second time now in about 2 or 3 weeks that we've seen JT Smith get counted out, a count out finish, which was something we never really saw. So Hack Myers picks up the win
Yep.
again.
Yeah, this was definitely an undercard type angle. I really wasn't digging it yet, but they got to have something for somebody. So JT Smith,
Yep.
I guess his gimmick. This was his gimmick now. Once because a few weeks back he had tried the plancha, uh, wiped out, and ended up having a goose egg kind of knot on his head. So after that, they made it the angle for him that he was clumsy and got himself counted out and DQ'd. So it is what it is. Not some of ECW's best work, but it's not all going to be A+ and applesauce. So moving on, so with Too Cold Scorpio, and next I have Jason Knight is back. Jason Knight, of course, would go on to become the manager of Just Incredible. People probably a little more familiar with him from that run in the 2000 era ECW. But Jason Knight, he was more a wrestler at this point, but he still had that same character, the most handsome man in the world, most handsome man gimmick. And he ended up picking up a pretty big win in a mixed tag match here. It was the Steiners and Taz against the Eliminators, Too Cold Scorpio, and Jason Knight. So a 7-man handicap match. But
Well, I don't believe Too Cold was not technically in the match, although he had got involved with the finish. He was not technically. Jason was because Too Cold would end up later being in the. This is was this the same from the Saturday Night Show? This was another match from the Saturday Night Show.
So yes.
So I think Too Cold had been moved into the cage match because Mustafa had gotten into some kind of legal trouble, so they subbed him out. But even though Too Cold Scorpio had come back in and gotten the finish, which led to Jason picking up the victory. And I just got to say, the Steiners and Taz is probably the best, like 6-man. They just go together like, I don't know, bees and honey.
You're right.
I don't know. I can't think of. They just went together so well. I mean, they just their intensity, their style. They even had like the varsity jackets where Taz had the T and they had the Michigan jackets, of course, representing the University of Michigan. So I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, no, it was fun, and like you said, that was a great pairing. Unfortunately, it wouldn't be too much longer until the Steiners are on their way out. They didn't have a long run in ECW. But
this was their transitioning period from WWF back to WCW.
Right. So. But so good stuff there. After that, we saw Taz and Steiner's promo after the match.
Loved it. Loved the promo.
Yeah, awesome stuff.
Scott Steiner, intergender competition match for all the femmes, and he name dropped Shawn Michaels, Jason. I thought it was great. I mean, you saw Steiner, already having the the intensity that he brought later as a big Papa Pump in the early days here in 1995, and it was a really funny promo. Man, he sometimes I think a lot of people and myself, or us included, you got to wonder if some of the dumb things he says are actually planned and to be funny, because here it seems that way. Maybe not later on, but here it seems like, I mean, it was funny. I enjoyed it. I love Scotty.
No disagreement on my end. It was good, and like you said, it was almost the starting of a really character breaking out for him. Before this time, they were just Rick and Scott, great wrestlers, but neither
no character.
An overwhelming character by any means.
No.
But you can see themselves trying to open their box a little bit, and Scotty ends up pulling this off pretty well.
What you had mentioned is the great thing here about ECW, and we'll see a little bit more of this in a minute, where you have the time to build or express yourself as a character, and kind of redefine your career in a way, as well as we'll see coming up later in the show. But definitely a good point you made last week.
Absolutely. The past few weeks it was Mick Foley. If you have a promo to cut and you need time, as long as it's entertaining, Paul Heyman would give you that time, and it wasn't uncommon. You'd see a Raven promo run on for a good 10 minutes sometimes. Sandman was another one, but Foley and even here we saw with Taz and the Steiners, it wasn't a quick 30 seconds. I'm coming for you, brother. Like you could tell when something rushed, and that wasn't it here. So it gives the time to simmer, gives the time to build. You finish strong, and that's a good promo. So I agree.
Definitely.
Let's see. On our way towards the end of the night, we see Mikey defeats the Sandman. A clip of that match. They're still moving this feud along. That's the heavyweight title program. Sandman's still the champ here at this point.
Sure. He pinned the champion in a non-title match, so that's kind of a big deal.
Absolutely. Sets him up for a shot. At this point, he's still clearly the underdog character. Undersized, under everything, but underestimated too. So that's the story they're pushing here. Sandman's still the king of the castle with woman by his side. Should be interesting to see what happens coming up there. Last thing I had before the main event, there was another Lance Wright hype video. I kind of dug those. They kind of would recap the entire show, or at least most of the majority angles. So
right.
Week to week, if you missed last week, they'll probably fill you in on most of what's going on. So it wasn't really like, you missed last week, you missed the Eliminators match, whatever. So they would do a good job of filling everybody in week to week. But the main event time, Rey Mysterio Jr. and Psicosis making their American soil debuts here in the ECW Arena of Philadelphia. The crowd knew these guys coming in, and this was a big deal. Absolutely. So, KG,
definitely. And
some thoughts on Rey and Psicosis.
Yeah, definitely. So we hear Rey Mysterio's WCW music as he comes out, which still bothers me when I hear the canned music that they use from back this time. Yeah. And his music in WCW was weird to me. It was like dum 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 dum. It was like this weird, like heelish kind of music, and I was like,
right.
Okay. But so when these guys came out to the ring, they were doing exactly. When they came out to the ring and they put together a match like this, so this actually didn't have the spot you were talking about or the spot I was talking about. They must do both of those spots: the stage dive, Hurricane Rana, and the car, because I think their rematch is a Falls Count Anywhere match, and I think that's what we were thinking of. But anyway, this was their debut, and they did so many things in the ring at this time that were never done in a ring. So many moves that just didn't have names, and Joey Styles was very well rounded announcer and very in depth at describing moves and knowing what the names of them were. And these guys were just pulling out stuff that was just groundbreaking at the time. And at this point, these guys had developed a counter to their counter moves. They had faced each other a gazillion times in Mexico, so they were very well familiar with each other. Rey Mysterio at this point had already been about a 6-year veteran. He's been wrestling since the age of 14, which is crazy. Rey Mysterio, his longevity. I know last week we talked about some of the guys who are still doing it in the ring, although it sounds like he may have retired. But yeah, I mean, groundbreaking stuff here with the Lucha Libres coming to ECW. Of course, Konnan was one of the first to orchestrate that, and 5-star match quality. A little bit shorter than some of the other ones that we've seen between these two, and we'll see them again in WCW. But really, really good stuff between these two guys.
Yeah, for sure. And you took all the words right out of my mouth. It was chemistry. And it wasn't by accident that Paul Heyman said, "Hey, this guy Rey Mysterio. Hey, this guy. Let me put these guys together." They came in as a package because Paul knew what he was getting. And he knew what he was about to give them, give the fans. But like you said, also we're going to see a continuation of this feud, just like this was the continuation of from Mexico. They roll into WCW with it, and not too much more time passes until they get there. But let's enjoy them while we got them. ECW, they're gonna really make their mark as far as Lucha Libre in the States go, and just something new, something different. You hadn't seen this at all yet. Eric Bischoff gets a lot of credit for bringing the cruiserweights to Nitro and this and that. This is already happening on ECW a month before he even had the idea. So
exactly.
More power to Paul Heyman and ECW for trying something different for American wrestling.
Absolutely, definitely. And the last thing we are left with on the show is my segment of the week. We got Steve-O-Mania, brother, Mean Joey. Stone Cold is born, essentially. This is where Stone Cold really has his voice, where he's speaking out against the Ric Flairs and the Hulk Hogans more specifically about being held back to mid-card status. And just a great, great promo from Stone Cold. At this point, we had never seen this type of intensity from his character in WCW, kind of more of a reserved or a Hollywood blonde, pretty boy, almost even. I don't know how you would explain it. All over the place, really. But just a great, great, iconic. This is it. This is the birth of Stone Cold Steve Austin right here on ECW TV.
For sure.
Hardcore TV.
I agree. This was Steve Austin's debut into ECW. He had just come from WCW, an underutilized run. He knew he had more to offer. The powers that be didn't see it. I think he was fired via FedEx. I think he was the story from Eric Bischoff.
Yeah. Right.
It's just not the way you want to let somebody go. So he left bitter. granted, accepted. He left bitter. He left pissed off. He left with a chip on his shoulder, and he knew Paul E and ECW was the place to revitalize himself, and that's exactly what we're going to start seeing. He's here a very short time. He has just a handful of matches, so don't blink. Next thing you know, the Ringmaster is on his way to the WWF. But for now, let's enjoy superstar Steve Austin for what we have here. So, but like you said, this was definitely the culmination or the beginning of what Steve Austin really had on the mic and as a character himself. So
definitely.
Stuff,
I guess Paulie had kind of called Austin up after he was fired and said, "Hey, why don't you come on down and just cut some promos?" Because he wasn't sure what he was doing. I think Stone Cold said he was just hanging out, drinking beer, which sounds par for the course. So
right.
He comes down and, Paulie gives him, they had ties, of course, from Paulie Dangerously, and WCW had brought him in to ECW wrestling at this time, and just loved it. That was my segment of the week. What was your segment of the week?
Well, if you go pay-per-view included, I still will go with Brett versus Lafitte. I thought that was a really awesome contest. But if we're just going to stick with the actual Monday night format, you know what? I'll agree with you this week because I don't really have anything from TV. It was all okay, but nothing really blew me away except this. So actually, no, I'll say Ray versus Psychosis just to put us a little bit of a difference. But either way, it was ECW this week. So if you're waiting to hear our show and figure out which one show you're going to go back and watch this week, I think it should be ECW. Quite a lot to bite into. They a little all over the place with the promos and backstage stuff, but once we get to the matches and that main event match, that's where the segment of the week came from.
To no fault of their own, as far as I enjoyed Raw better this week. The only thing that it's hard to watch ECW TV sometimes, hardcore TV, is it is very jumping around. You go to this segment, to this segment, to this segment, and they do the little static of the VHS tape and go to this, and then they go to this, go to that. So you don't get to see a lot of good matches. And of course, they did have, of course, one classic one with Ray and Psychosis, but it doesn't always flow together, and I've ended on a extremely high note. So I guess for my segment of the week, I'm going with Steve Mania. For my show of the week, I'm going with Monday Night Raw. I just thought that it flowed very well. They had 3 stellar matches, as opposed to, one or none. Nitro, even though they won the ratings war this week, or no, yes, they did. They had the higher rating. I didn't get a lot out of watching Nitro this week. I see that they're building stuff for their next pay-per-view, Halloween Havoc, so they got to start somewhere. But not a lot of stuff for me to enjoy this week on Nitro. A little bit disappointed because I had enjoyed the previous weeks. I had enjoyed Nitro better than Raw. This week I enjoyed Raw, and we're gonna have this back and forth. This is part of why we're doing the show here.
Yeah, right. Because it's easy to say, in the history books, oh, WWF won the Monday Night War, they must have been better. Well, no, 1 week there was a lot of good stuff on WCW, and WWF sucked. And the following week it's going to be different, so that's, like you said, that's the point of this thing, is to really break it down a little bit. Obviously, if we're doing a one review, well, it'll be one show, and we know the WWF won, and that's the end of it. But so we're gonna keep sticking in here. We're gonna move into October next week. No pay-per-view this week, so it's just going to be 3 shows coming up for next week as well. But I like it. Moving into October of '95, the fall has come on strong, and I'll say ECW for my show of the week, and Ray and Psychosis segment of the week as well. So ECW on my end, a little bit of Raw from KG, but Nitro was a good show. Don't take it wrong way. Say it was a bad show just because it didn't get our vote this week. But no, I like it. And ECW.
Yeah, certainly a lot of action between all the shows, and a lot of stories that are going to be built, and a lot of big names being thrown around. I mean, Steve Austin now, who is not necessarily a big name at this point, but showing up on ECW. You got Savage and Luger on WCW. You got Shawn Michaels and Diesel and Razor, of all those guys. Bret Hart, of course, on Raw. So we have, some huge Hall of Fame names. So I'm going to actually bring this back to something I had mentioned earlier in the show. Would be our poll question for the week. We talked about some of the managers, of course. Bill Alfonso we mentioned on ECW and Woman. But who is your favorite manager all time? Favorite manager, not from just this era. Freddie Blassie we mentioned, the Grand Wizard going back before that. All right, so get a hold of us and let us know who your favorite managers are of all time. Certainly, this decade, this era of wrestling has lots to offer, lots of iconic managers. So let us know what we got. Sig, final thoughts here for the show.
Good week. The end of September is in the books. Next week's show will be right in October. So the fall is coming in strong. WWF Raw, WCW Nitro, and ECW Hardcore TV, all solid shows, and looks like they're picking up some momentum. And now that we're following along with the storylines, it's going to be a little easier to pick out if they're going in the right direction. So I think we're good. Thank you guys for your support. Until next week, he's KG, up and down wherever he is. He's somewhere. I am John Sig for the West Coast. Thank you once again. East West Connection Wrestling Podcast. We'll see you next week, folks.
Hear me?